Hello, everyone. We're going to do chapters 9 and 10 of White Fang today. Move my pen out of the way there. So, chapter 9, The Famine. In April, Gray Beaver returned to the summer village. White Fang was now a year old. Though still not fully grown, he was larger than the others his age, except for Lip Lip. And he was intelligent. His strong build came from his wolf father, and his mental strength came from his half-dog mother. The man animals cut up a large moose, giving parts to the dog. White Fang got a hoof and part of the shin bone with quite a bit of meat attached. He was eating his prize when Basik, an old dog, rushed in upon him. White Fang slashed back at him, and Basik stepped back in surprise. The meaty shin bone lay between them. And there you see, that's the Mackenzie River. Basik bristled fiercely and snarled across the shin bone. White Fang felt small and looked for a way to escape, but then Basik made his mistake. He still thought of White Fang as just a pup, and himself as the strong bully. He stepped forward to the meat. This was too much for White Fang. He could not stand by while another took what belonged to him. He struck without warning, and Basik was knocked off his feet. His throat was bitten, his ears ripped, his shoulder torn. The swiftness of it was bewildering. The situation was now reversed. White Fang stood over the shin bone and snarled at Basik. Basik calmly retreated. White Fang had stood his ground against a full-grown dog. He now walked proudly among the dogs. The older dogs quickly learned that if they left him alone, he left them alone. In midsummer, White Fang was trotting along the edge of the village when he came upon Quiche. He paused and looked at her. He began to remember her, but she did not remember him. She lifted her lip in a snarl, and then the old memories rushed back to him. There we see White Fang, and there we see Basik. So, when the old memories rushed back to him, he bounded towards her joyously, but she met him with sharp fangs. He did not understand. He backed slowly away, puzzled. But it was not Quiche's fault. The wolf mother was made to remember her cubs of a year or so before. So she did not remember White Fang. He was now a strange animal. She had a new litter of puppies to guard. White Fang looked at Quiche licking one of her new puppies. There was no place in her for his life anymore. There was no place for him in hers. Quiche snarled once more at him, and White Fang walked away. The months went by, and White Fang grew stronger and heavier. He had only one weakness. He could not stand being laughed at. It so outraged him that for hours he would behave like a demon, racing about and attacking other dogs. In the third year of his life, a great famine came to the Mackenzie Indians. In the summer, the fish failed. In the winter, the caribou and moose were scarce. The rabbits almost disappeared. Only the strong survived. The old and weak died of hunger. There was wailing in the village as all went hungry. And there you see White Fang, you see Quiche, and the little puppies in the background. A few of the boldest and wisest dogs fled into the forest. There, in the end, they starved to death or were eaten by wolves. In this time of misery, White Fang also stole away into the woods. Unlike the other dogs, he had learned the ways of the woods in his cubhood. He hunted out squirrels and wood mice patiently and cunningly. He even robbed one of Gray Beaver's rabbit snares. He journeyed over to the valley and stream where he had been born. Here in the old cave, he came upon Quiche. She too had fled the camp and had given birth to more puppies. Only one puppy remained alive. White Fang looked in and left and trotted up the stream. He found the old hiding place of the lynx that he and his mother had fought long before. Here he settled down and rested for a day. During the early summer, he met Lip Lip, who had also taken to the woods. Trotting in opposite directions around a high bluff, they each rounded a corner of rock and found themselves face to face. Lip Lip learned too late that small cubs soon grew up, and that they remembered. White Fang left him dead by the stream. Like White Fang, there's Lip Lip. One day not long after, White Fang came to the edge of the forest. Here a narrow stretch of open land sloped down to the Mackenzie River. He paused to study the situation. Familiar sights, sounds, and scents called to him. It was the old village changed to a new place. And there was a smell in the air of fish. There was food. The famine was gone. He came out boldly from the forest and trotted straight to Gray Beaver's teepee. Grey Beaver was not there, but Kloo Kooch welcomed him with glad cries and fresh fish. He lay down to wait for Grey Beaver. Chapter 10, The Enemy of His Kind. And there you see, looks like White Fang on a canoe with somebody, possibly a Grey Beaver. With Lip Lip gone, Mitsaw made White Fang the new leader of the sled team. This made the dogs hate him. They hated him when Mitsaw gave him extra meat. They hated him because he seemed to receive special favors. And they hated him because he was always at the head of their team, fleeing just out of reach. And White Fang hated them back. He hated being at the head of the yelling pack. He hated running away from the dogs he had defeated for the past 3 years. And if he turned upon them, Mitsaw would throw the stinging lash of the whip into his face. White Fang could only slow down when Mitsaw cried out for the team to stop. At first, this caused trouble for the other dogs. They would attack White Fang only to be hit with a whip by Mitsaw. The dogs came to understand that when Mitsaw gave the order to stop, White Fang was to be left alone. But when White Fang stopped without orders, then they were allowed to spring upon him. The dogs learned that it was best to keep together. White Fang was too terrible for any of them to face alone. He was too quick for them, too big, too wise. Unlike the other dogs, he still had the wild in him. He was the enemy of his own kind. Grey Beaver could not help but admire and marvel at White Fang. When White Fang was nearly 5 years old, Grey Beaver took him on another journey. In many of the villages along the way, White Fang attacked the strange dogs. They were ordinary dogs. They were not prepared for his swiftness. They growled, but White Fang wasted no time growling. He was at their throats before they knew what was happening. He was a skilled fighter. The dogs had no chance against him. There we see White Fang in the front, and all the other dogs, and Mitsaw, and the whip. It was in the summer that White Fang and Grey Beaver arrived at Fort Yukon. Grey Beaver had crossed between the Mackenzie and the Yukon rivers in the late winter. He spent the spring hunting around the western Rockies. He waited for the ice to break up on the Porcupine River. Then he had built a canoe and paddled down that stream to meet the Yukon River just under the Arctic Circle. It was the summer of 1898. Thousands of gold hunters were going up the Yukon. Some had even come from the other side of the world. Here Grey Beaver stopped. A whisper of the gold rush had reached his ears. He had come with several bales of furs, mittens, and moccasins to trade. It was a good trip. He made more profit than he expected. It was at Fort Yukon that White Fang saw his first white men. They had houses and a huge fort of logs. For the first few hours, he was content with slinking around and watching them from a safe distance. The white men also watched White Fang with great curiosity. They pointed him out to one another. When they came near him, he showed his teeth and backed away. So there are all these men pointing at him. There's Grey Beaver. There's this guy going, "Hey, bud." It looks like White Fang is starting to back up, and he's got his teeth bared. He's starting to bare them. Every 2 or 3 days, a steamboat stopped at the bank for several hours. The white men came off these steamers and went away on them again. White Fang was cautious with the white men, but not with their dogs. He was an enemy of all dogs. All he had to do when the strange dogs came ashore was to show himself. They rushed at him from off the ships out of instinct, but these dogs were soft and helpless. White Fang sprang to the side, confusing the dogs. In that moment, he struck them on the shoulder, rolling them off their feet and going for the throat. The pack would rush in and finish, killing the dog, while White Fang ran to safety. It was then that the white men rushed in. White Fang would stand off at a little distance and look on while stones, clubs, axes, and all sorts of weapons fell upon the other dogs. White Fang enjoyed it all. He did not love his own kind. He hated all dogs, those of the Indians and those of the white men. How could White Fang have turned out any other way? He had seen the first light of day in a lonely cave. He had fought his first fights in the wild with the grouse, the weasel, and the lynx. There you see the steamboat. There's dogs coming off, and there's White Fang already going to town. Knocking a guy over. These other dogs didn't come in. Or knocking a dog over, I should say, not a guy. Let's go on. His puppyhood had been made bitter by the bullying of Lip Lip and the whole puppy pack. If Lip Lip had never existed, White Fang might have grown up happily with the other puppies. It would have become more dog-like with more liking for dogs. If Grey Beaver had shown just a little love, White Fang might have turned out more trusting and kind. But these things had not been so. The world molded White Fang until he became what he was. He was unloving and ferocious. He was the enemy of all his kind. There's where we'll stop for now. At least we know what enemy of all his kind means. Our next video, we'll do chapters 11 and 12. See you then. Thank you so much for joining us.